Hey everyone, this is a recording from the MatchPal webinar, How We Did It, Matching Competitively as a DO. This featured 7 DOs who matched in competitive specialties. We hope you get a lot of value from this webinar. If you're interested in working with someone from the MatchPal team, please click the link in the description below.
We'll just get going. And so just thank everyone for joining us today for our panel for DOs in competitive fields. My name is Dan. This is, some of the phenomenal friends and colleagues that collectively work with me at MatchPal, and we're really excited to share our journeys with you in joining, competitive specialties. I think it's really important for everyone here, if you're here, to ask yourself why you're here. I think kind of like setting an intention, kind of like digging deep of like, what's the purpose of what you're trying to get out of today? I think I remember going back to my position in your shoes. I didn't really even know what I wanted to do right away. Switched my mind a couple of different times throughout my career. And along the way, like getting the quality advice from my mentors, from upperclassmen, from residents, like really that was the most valuable thing to me. And I think the whole allure of chasing a competitive field or a competitive institution can be very daunting, especially if you're not aware of what that entails. And I think part of that is where we're at today, right? And the other part of it is giving you guys the advice that you need to actually get there successfully. And I think we all did a pretty damn good job of doing that. So we're really happy to kind of deliver it back to you guys. And that kind of leads us into why we're here. We were all not, we're even though we're at a range of different academic backgrounds and a range of specialties and residency years, we're all very, very close to this process because we not only did it ourselves, but we also work with students every single year doing the same thing. And one of the most common things that we've seen is the students that really wish that they stumbled upon our Instagram page or our blog or worked with us sooner. And so we put together these events multiple times a year, free of charge, just to give you guys the advice that we honestly think every med student deserves to have so they can make the right decisions as far as pursuing a specialty and actually how to get there. And we hope that by 9 o'clock Eastern time, when this ends, you guys are in a phenomenal position to start or continue your own journeys. So goal, we'll talk a little bit about intros. We'll get to know our panelists today. We're really excited to introduce in just a second. We'll talk about choosing careers, things that junior med students should be thinking about. We'll talk about what more senior med students should be thinking about, or probably and hopefully are already thinking about. And then we'll talk about what what the road lies like, what the road ahead looks like, right? What MS4 and beyond looks like. And then you guys will get a chance to actually interact with people in the breakout rooms. If you guys are interested in specific specialties, we'll have a breakout room for each of the panelists. So without further ado, before we get into the med school timeline, which you guys are probably familiar with, I'm going to go around and introduce some of my awesome panelists. So I'll start first. My name is Dan. I'm PGY4 resident. I'm in interventional radiology, which a lot of you may have never even heard of. I know I didn't when I was a first or second year med student. It's kind of like minimally invasive procedures, and I love it. And I'm over in New York City. And I think next on my roster, I have Risa. So Risa, why don't you tell us a little bit about where you're at?
Hi everyone, I'm Risa. I'm currently I guess technically a PGY3. I am a general surgery resident at Rutgers. My program has us do at least research years up to 3 research years. So I'm currently in one of my research years doing breast surgery research at Memorial Sloan Kettering in New York City.
Awesome. And we are definitely going to pick your brain on research years before residency, in addition to taking them during residency. All right, next I have Olivia.
Hey everyone, I'm Olivia. I'm a PGY1 over at Mayo Clinic in Arizona and originally from Oregon, went to school in Idaho.
Awesome. Brandon.
Hey everyone, I'm Brandon. I'm a current orthopedic experts fellow at University of Pennsylvania. I did my residency training up on Long Island in New York at Northwell Health at Huntington Hospital. I'm originally from the New Jersey area.
Love it. All right, Joe.
Hey everyone, I'm Joe. I graduated from Nova Southeastern down in Fort Lauderdale. Staying down here doing my PGY1 at University of Miami in their transitional year, and I'll be moving back home to New York City to do dermatology at St. Barnabas next year. Nice to meet everyone.
Love it. All right, Anvin.
Hello, everyone. My name is Anvin. I'm new to MatchPal, been with the program for the past 6 months. Been loving it ever since. I'm pediatrics PGY1 at Yale, so I love pediatrics. I love academic medicine. I would love to talk about more later today as well. And I went to NYTCOM for medical school, and I also did a master's in academic medicine.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Anvin. All right. Next, I got Simon.
Hey everyone, my name is Simon. I'm a PGY4 last year resident in anesthesia in NYU Langone in New York City. And I'm super excited to talk with you guys and kind of give you my little tips and tricks on how to do this as a DO.
Love it. Love it. All right. So everyone here, we got a wide range of people here. There's a pretty even distribution between first, second, and third year med students. All right. Um, Depending on where you're at in the journey, there's different things that you're stressed about, thinking about, planning for. Our goal is to try to address as many of those as possible today. So looking at this timeline, the thing that always this is from the AMC, and the thing that always stuck out to me is the M4 is this long, it's obviously every year is 1 year, but the M4 bar is disproportionately longer and bigger and looks scarier. And I think that's what the ultimate goal of everything is. All of your culmination of work in med school really culminates in getting the ultimate reward currency of residency interviews and matching your top choice program. And, I think that really it should be flipped, because I think it's actually everything that you do the first 3 years that actually allows you to get that final outcome. And so hopefully I can convince you guys that really it's what you're doing now that matters. That stuff is actually just a byproduct of it. I think in order to understand how you match, you have to first understand what's the right specialty to even pursue, why we chose it. So let's start with maybe Risa. Why don't you tell us a little bit about motivations for pursuing general surgery, and at what point in your med school career did you have confidence that you were it was a lock, this is what I'm pursuing?
I'm probably a little bit non-traditional in this. I feel like most people come in wanting to do surgery and then they change their mind. I kind of knew I wanted to do surgery back in high school, honestly. I did. We had to do an internship in high school, and I literally spent my internship at the surgical ICU actually at Yale. And my mom's a surgical ICU nurse, so my whole life had been really exposed to critically ill patients. I'm also very impatient, so I like to see results immediately. I was always a dancer too, so kind of doing things with my hands or my body. It just kind of all clicked to me for surgery. So yeah, I think since high school, I did go in with an open mind to third year, because I was surgery is obviously not an easy specialty to go into. It's a long residency, it's hard. So I was trying to find anything else, but I ended up still sticking with surgery. So yeah.
That means your gut was really guiding you really well all along. All right. What about Brandon? What about for you for ortho? Was that something you always wanted to do, or did you kind of make the switch at some point during your career?
Yeah, I'm pretty stereotypical ortho all the way through. So went into med school thinking that, and always played sports and had a bunch of injuries and stuff growing up, and that's kind of a very stereotypical path for ortho. But we have a lot of students that decide late, so it's not something that you have to decide about early on.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know, Joe, you were doing dermatology from day one as well, right?
Yeah, so I mean, I knew coming into medical school I wanted to derm, but it's something that's really, really tough, especially as a DO. So it's really scary to commit to it. It was sort of on the back burner, something I was working towards the first few years of med school, and it wasn't really till about halfway through M3 year that I really started openly saying that's what I was gunning for. And once I really committed to it, I was all in, no safety net.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, my journey was definitely circuitous. I'll say I started med school thinking about anesthesia, and then I switched over to surgery and pursued vascular surgery for a while. Then through research opportunities, I found IR. So I think I only really started my IR journey as early MS3, which is, for some of the more competitive fields can be more challenging to get your CV in line with what the standard is, especially, for us DOs. But nonetheless, I think my takeaway advice is if you can figure it out by the beginning of MS3, you're motivated, you can probably make it work for virtually any field, as long as you have the right kind of steps laid out in front of you. Olivia, why don't you tell me about, pursuing urology coming out of DO school, it's obviously like not a common field. There's probably like less than, I don't know, I mean, you probably know the numbers better than I do, but maybe like less than 20 DOs that match into urology, I'd imagine, every single year. So to walk me through like, committing to urology, but knowing like what were the kind of barriers that you faced as far as like getting guidance from within your school? Like who did you go to? What was your like first starting?
Yeah, so I tell everybody that it was kind of a freak accident how I ended up in urology. My story is kind of similar to Risa's. I wanted to do primary care getting into medical school, and then I was actually following a urologist on Instagram, and she was posting all this stuff about sexual health, and I was like, wow, that's so cool. I wonder when we're going to learn about it in med school. Realized we were never going to learn about it, and so then I started doing my own research, and I was like, wow, this is fascinating. And I tried starting my own elective at our school so that students can learn about sexual health. It got shot down several times. And at that point, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to DM this urologist who's probably not going to reply to me and see what their take is on sexual health training in medical school. And she replied to me immediately. And she was like, I love what you're doing. Join my research team. And so it really was kind of a freak accident, but that's how I got my exposure. I'm one of two people who matched urology at my school for the first time ever. So I had absolutely no mentorship at my school. And once I realized that I can just ask for help in weird ways, like on social media, and still get the mentorship I need, then I kind of let that whole effect snowball. And I started reaching out to people on Twitter and then going to conferences and networking. And so that's like really how it started for me. And I think that's what made the biggest difference in my application and helped me stand out.
I love that. Yeah, I think it's always so fascinating to me, both in my own journey and working with people that that I advise and mentor. Like what one seemingly inconsequential action that you do can cause a whole cascade of events that sets you up for success. Like it's just like unreal. It's unreal, and I think the number one thing to take away from that is like you absolutely don't know until you try what is lying on the other side, right? I think like a lot of the time the biggest thing that we struggle with is like you're looking up at the mountain and you're like, how do I climb this mountain of like getting these scores, getting publications, getting the application that I need to get competitive enough. And then, all it take, the activation energy is harder than the actual effort that it takes once you find the right people around you to carry you. All right. Is there anything, maybe Joe, I know you were pursuing derm from day one, but you probably did a lot of things right. Was there any pushback maybe from your school as far as like pursuing derm? Was that like something that was that like a pathway that was like well established, or you like kind of one of many maybe, or is it like always like a couple of kids every single year that match, or like how did that work for you?
That's a great question. So Nova is one of the older DO schools. So we've had a track record, I would say, between 1 and 3, 1 and 2, usually every year matched into derm from our program. But there were a ton of roadblocks along the way. I know, and I know this is an experience I've heard from many students who I've worked with, just mentoring. Uh, all of the mandatory advising sessions, every single step of the way, M1, M2, M3, they kept telling me, I don't know if this is going to happen for you. I think you need to come up with a backup. I don't know that you have enough research yet at this point. I don't know if you have the connections. Oh, you moved to this area. You're not well established in, with a network of DO dermatologists in the area. How are you going to do it? So really building up from square one and kind of fighting against my school, it was challenging. And I'm sure this is the case for many of our panelists here. Now, I was incredible friends with the other people applying. I got to know them incredibly well. We grew together through every year of medical school. And it was such, it was tough. I knew that out of the 10, 11, 12 people applying derm our cycle, only 1, maybe 2 would get in. And I knew how much more qualified some of them were on paper, how some of them had better test scores. Some of them had 10 more publications than I did. And it's really, sizing yourself up against your peers who are your friends it really gets in your own head. But I think some of the best advice I can give students who are looking at this uphill battle that seems so daunting, that seems so lonely is at the end of the day, the only competition really is yourself. You're not competing against your peers. You're competing against yourself to become the best candidate you can, to accomplish as much as you can, to really set yourself up for success. And I think if we as a panel can teach you anything, it's that anything is possible. And I think we've really figured out some steps that are very replicable, that can really lend you to succeeding in any field that you're trying to set yourself up for.
Love that. Couldn't have said it better myself. All right. So I think the number one thing that junior med students that we chat with, they're looking at like, advisors that are either not in the, they don't have access to the advisors that are in the specialty, which happens at some schools. The other thing is they do have advisors, but they're like 50 years old, 60 years old, and they're like not really the best people for the most up-to-date advice. Like the match literally changed 3 times since I applied 4 years ago. So like this is an evolving process. So that's another thing. Another thing is like actually getting someone to sit with you and like I always say this, like anybody can get a person to chat with you for like a couple of minutes. Like I think you can, even like messaging people or emailing, like you could always get someone to give you advice 1 time, maybe 2 times. I think like having someone to like peers that you can leverage for the entirety of the process as you encounter the different kind of milestones, that's like really super valuable. I know for me, it was, we had like one person match IR a couple of years before me, and he was amazing, but he was really busy and not really necessarily like a massive part of the mentorship, experience for me. And so like I really leaned on people that I met through the National IR Society, through research projects, through like attendings at conferences, like through all these different avenues. And like it was hard and I still got what I needed out of it, but it's really hard to like cherry pick 5 minutes, 10 minutes of advice from like 30 different people. And that's kind of something that, that's just like a challenge that I think a lot of students face. I think out of the interest of time, we'll kind of keep it moving. I always like to include this one. So this is like, for the junior med students, if you need a quick and dirty algorithm, snap a picture, look at it later. I always tell people like the number one thing for choosing a specialty is like, do you want to operate? Like start there. Everything else can follow, but that's like the number one decision, right? Like a lot of algorithms and specialty kind of chooser guidance or whatever you want to call it will start at different points. Like to me, this is the most important one because it's very, it's 2 different types of people that want a career where they're going to be using their hands to open and cut and remove or treat things. And then that's 2 different types of mindsets and people. And it's also 2 very different pathways because usually, almost always, the more operative fields are much more competitive. And so they require very different perspectives. So, we're not going to get too much into this, but I think this is like a really good roadmap that we put together for trying to get a sense. If you're like, I don't know where to start, this is it. So let's get into kind of wrapping up MS1 and MS2. I think we covered a lot of these points. Okay. I think the first thing is, when you're just, if you're not sure or you have a hunch or you're like, I might do this thing or that thing, kind of stuck between a couple of different fields, or maybe you're one of the people that like everything sounds good to me. I have no idea. I think joining interest groups, which many of you probably are, I think is a great place. But the number one piece of advice that I can give you is the quality and the longevity and the impact of your role is significantly more important than how many roles you have, right? And I don't know, maybe Anvin, if you want to chat, I know you were involved at NYT with a bunch of different stuff. Can you chat a little bit about, your perspective on participating in activities, interest groups, or any other sort of like on-campus kind of experiences like that, and any pearls about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think the main thing is like, hey, getting involved is like one of the biggest things that you can do because as many people have already mentioned, that's how you kind of build your network. That's how you find like-minded peers that you can really rely on and kind of grow with as you kind of go through your journey together, no matter what specialty that you're interested in. And I feel like setting yourself up for success early on is like one of the big things that you can do. I'm actually a little bit more of the interesting side, whereas like, at least for me, I did not join my pediatrics interest group. However, I was interested in academic medicine and I got involved with that pretty early on. And as I found my love of pediatrics and like kind of confirmed it during my MS2, MS3 year, it was like the people that I met during that were involved in pediatrics through their interest group that I grew to rely on when I reached out to be like, hey, can I learn more about this? How did you get involved here? What research opportunities did you find? Et cetera, et cetera. And something where it's like I joined a bunch of clubs and I was like treasurers for a bunch of them. I included like 2 of them on my ERAS application because in the end, it didn't really matter. It's like something where it looked nice at the time, but something where the quality really didn't matter in the long run, where it's like there's only so many things I want to talk about and really emphasize during my application. use your time wisely. I think that's something where I wish I kind of prioritized early on as well.
Yeah, I think it's super easy to like look at there's always like the couple of kids in your class that are going to be involved in like seven different things. And then you always feel like you're comparing yourself to them or being maybe behind and things like that. I think ultimately, remember, you can only include 10 experiences on your ERAS in total. That's between volunteering, leadership, research, and any other like, work experience, paid jobs, etc. Right. And if you're only going to be able to include 10 and you're covering med school and maybe your gap year or maybe one or two experiences from undergrad, like there's really no incentive in doing 4 or 5 different things during med school. Like pick one thing and go super deep and have a tremendous impact. Like when I'm reviewing applications for my program, I would much rather the person that had 3 years in a row of leadership in one club that was ideally radiology, because I'm biased, right? That's what we're selecting for. And I want to see that person go from treasurer to VP to president. And I want to know what they did to change and better that club over those 3 years and then speak about it passionately and intelligently. Like to me, that's way more impressive than having 7 different like membership or low level roles and like not really being able to talk about the impact that they had or why they did it or why they even spent time doing it when they probably could have just been like doing flashcards and been better off, right? So I think that's a really important point. The other thing is if you're starting to get an inkling of a sense of like, I really want to do this specific specialty, think about how can I get more involved beyond my school? Because especially coming from a DO school, depending on where you go, you may not have all the full breadth of exploration and opportunity for your specialty, especially if you're choosing a competitive one. And again, depending on the school. So now it's okay to go outside of the school. I think this is the biggest thing that I wish I did earlier because I didn't do this until probably like MS3. Like you can go beyond your school. You can send emails. You can participate in local or national societies. Every single specialty has local meetings, regional meetings, national ones. Go there, inquire. There's always attendings and residents that serve on like different like med student subcommittees and groups. Like leverage those people. Like they are people who are committing to a cause because they're passionate about meeting and inspiring new minds in the field. So you're allowed and encouraged to get that sort of interaction and inspiration and guidance from these people, just even though they're not necessarily at your school. You never know what kind of opportunities will come from it. And it's just a very big blind spot that a lot of students have. And then the other thing is networking. And I always talk about the 3 levels of mentorship every like med student should have, right? Whether you're MS1, 2, or 3, it doesn't matter. Every med student should have an MS4 mentor that is applying into the field that you're interested in because they're like the ones going through it. They're living it. They understand what the application season looks like right now. They don't know how they're faring necessarily. I mean, maybe they got a good amount of interviews, maybe not, but they understand the process and the things that are the most up-to-date things from like an applicant side. Then you need a resident mentor who is like working with sub-Is, hearing the PD, sitting on the interview committee, and like probably the best position, right? They just did it themselves. They know that angle. And they also know all about the selection process and what is like really important to program directors because as med students, you can think you know, but you don't really actually know. Then there's attendings, which is like a harder level of like connection to form. It's definitely more arduous. It takes a little bit more, trial and error, a little bit more luck, you could say. But that is also really valuable because again, they're like a level beyond the residents. They see how the residents work. They see how the med students work. They see what makes a really good team member in a program because they've been working and seeing trainees come up from different schools, backgrounds, and processes, and they know what they're selecting for, and they can help guide you as far as what you should be doing to get there as well. All right, so let's jump into MS3, right? So again, whether you're
in real quick, Daniel, I know this is something you've heard me say before, but when it comes to matching into a competitive specialty, there is one thing that is helpful above everything else, and that is nepotism. Nepotism can get you far and wide. If you have someone in your corner pulling for you, that's incredible. If you, whatever hand of cards you've been dealt, maximize it and use that to the maximum. But if you're like me and like many of us on this panel and you didn't have a nepotism, that's not the end of the world. The entire purpose of networking, finding mentors, finding residents to work with, proving yourself, is building nepotism for yourself. Really, that's the whole point of networking. It's to find mentors who will vouch for you, who fight for you and help really are you can't do this without. You can't match competitively without having the right people in your corner.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, I definitely didn't have anyone, that I could lean on automatically. But I think by proving myself through research projects that I was a part of, and by just being an overall like available and like competent student when I did take on projects, leadership roles, research, etc., I think people just recognize that, and you're able to leverage those into people vouching for you. Like I got 2 out of my 3 sub-Is because I just like really did strong work with my research team. Like that's where I ended up doing my sub-Is, and then I ended up matching one of those places. So I couldn't agree more, Joe. Like create your own nepotism. It's a really good framework to think about. So I'll get into MS3. So whether you're a current third year or whether you're a second year looking ahead, which is really good if you are, maybe let's start with Simon, right? Simon, why don't you tell us a little bit about, rotating, you're an MS3. How are you balancing the studying? Obviously, there's a shelf exam, there's step 2. You might have some research projects going on. And then you also have to like show up and like actually be a good student. Like, what's your framework for prioritizing those things, and maybe some tips that people can use?
Yeah, so it's really hard. I think it's really hard when you have to kind of like quote unquote work and go into the hospital, and then on top of that, you have like an exam to study for. What to prioritize? Honestly, both. When I was an MS3, and I think most MS3s that are trying to, get into competitive fields, they kind of think the same thing, I think, where it's like, I'm going to prioritize my exams and these numbers that I think program directors really care about. And I'm just going to try and get through my rotation. I'm not going to be, completely absent and just not care about it, but I'm just, going to prioritize the test grades. Now, as I look back, the truth is that you kind of want to prioritize both. And like I said, it is really difficult. But the reason why you want to do that is because when you get to your sub-Is, when you become a resident, most importantly, when you become a sub-I, the skills and just the etiquette that you have on those, important rotations, they come from, they're bred from your time in the hospital as an MS3. You kind of learn, what to say, not to say, how to say it. If you're in the OR, just kind of know, when it's your place to kind of get involved, when it's not, etc. So, in terms of prioritizing those things, I think they're both certainly a priority. You're all medical students. You all can, make your own schedule in terms of when to study, and, whether you do it after your rotation or before your rotation. But you definitely want to use your MS3 clerkships to just develop your skills as a team member. Because sometimes it may not feel like you're a team member. Sometimes students are given ridiculous tasks, like, just kind of scut work, as we call them, in the hospital. But those tasks eventually turn into actual like important tasks, and you want to make sure that you're comfortable in that setting. You know how to communicate on a professional level. You know how to be a good team player. You know how to just be someone that's good and cool to hang out with. All that comes from your MS3 year. So don't take that stuff lightly. Would be kind of the way I would think about this.
I couldn't agree more. And I think especially for those of us pursuing surgical subspecialties, which I think is like over 75% of the people on this call right now, like that autonomy to get to the point where you're holding a scalpel, a needle, touching a patient yourself, with trust from a resident or attending. There's so many of those little things that you are proving yourself every step of the way, right? Like a lot of it is scut, but it's almost the way I saw it and the way I see it now. It almost is like a test, right? Meaning, sure, is getting a patient on and off a bed, the primary educational objective of you being on a rotation? No, it's not, right? No one's here to tell you that it is. However, if you take the initiative after I told you one time to help set the room up and get the patient on the bed and take the stretcher out and make sure the table's good and kind of like make sure the equipment is like ready, and like if I told you that once and every time we go into OR for the next week you did that, I'm like, my life is easier. I'm impressed. I want you. I don't want the other meds. I want you to be the student rotating with me. I'm going to be upset when they get me the new guy that doesn't listen to me or doesn't like pick that up. And like, that's exactly how you roll into sub-Is, knowing how to provide value and being a valuable team player that people want to recruit to their program. And that's how you differentiate yourself. And this is how we've seen people make up for board score deficits, research deficits, anything. Like the number one thing is that you are fundamentally being hired for a job, and how you are able to demonstrate your ability to do that job. Part of it is like, yeah, do you have academic aptitude? But a huge part of it is like, are you fun to work with and easy to work with? Are you professional? And are you just going to like pick up on how to make the workflow better automatically? I know, Brandon, you talk about this a lot with ortho as far as, like the students being the value add. I know you guys like have tons of students rotating through when you're in residency. Going back, what was some things that maybe like the third years that like ended up being rock star applicants? Like, is there a common thread in terms of like how they were on the rotation, or things that they did, or things that like that you noticed about them?
So I think for our program particularly, we did not have third year students rotate with us. We're like strictly fourth year sub-Is. I think that the students who performed well, or above standard, often had completed like a third year rotation during some sort of elective time or surgical sub-I time. And usually having any orthopedic prior experience is super helpful, obviously. But I think that the students who were able to complete that rotation with a residency program and really see what inpatient, consult management and stuff with the residency team gave like those students a big leg up when it came to their sub-Is. Because I think a lot of students have some sort of, orthopedic background, have some sort of probably private practice, outpatient only kind of situation. So they haven't seen that side of orthopedics. And I think that the ones who do are a big advantage.
Nice. I think that's really helpful. What about you, Olivia? Like, I know urology is definitely not something that we are automatically exposed to as med students for most people. So like, how did you get did you like get that kind of exposure earlier in your, like during MS3, or did you like wait until sub-Is? Like, or, tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, for sure. So when I got exposed to urology, it was luckily in my first year. And I was like, okay, I know that even if I'm remotely interested in this specialty, I need to just pursue it like it's my number one goal. Because worst thing, I'm super prepared, have all this research, do well, and then I choose family med. Oh no, So I just went in like gung ho, and I actually just cold emailed a bunch of urologists in our community. And I was like, hey, can I come shadow you and make for sure that this is something that I want to pursue? And so I found a couple people to shadow when I was in M1, M2. And then I actually had to seek out my own third year rotation too, because there wasn't a set urology rotation for me to do my third year. And so my school helped me out with that one a little bit more, thankfully, but I still had to seek that opportunity for myself. And I definitely don't think that I would have done as well on sub-Is had I not had that experience, because even when you're shadowing as an M1, M2, they're not letting you touch patients most of the time. They're not letting you do anything. So you learn how to be a helpful member of the team as an M3. And then applying for sub-Is, I really took all those skills with me, and I shot for the stars. And I don't know if we'll get into it, but there's a lot of strategy that went into my sub-I choosings as well. But that's my experience as far as getting my exposure to urology.
I love that. Yeah, I think getting the exposure in M1, M2 is like super critical. I know we had it on the slide, we didn't touch upon it. Like going for it even a day, just like go for a day and just see what it's like. Like if you're interested, go send the email, show up, take a day off of whatever else is going on in your schedule. I didn't say it, you didn't hear from me, skip lecture for the day and go to the clinic and see it, right? Like you can't know and go into this whole field and do all this research and do all these other things for a field that you just like think sounds cool, or you saw pays well, or you want to do surgery. So you think it's like, you think it's like just really interesting to you. Like you have to see it. And I think during third year, I mean, I did that myself. There was definitely no radiology or IR rotation. I was like finishing my day on internal medicine and going downstairs, knocking on the guy's door. I was like, you guys have any cases left? And I would just like watch him till 5 or 6. And sure, it made my day longer. And sure, I could have gone home and studied or done whatever. But getting that exposure made me confirm that I absolutely knew I was making the right choice. And I honestly picked up some of those like softer kind of like technical skills and interpersonal skills that is unique to IR that you're not necessarily going to get on other rotations. So it was like if I would have done it all over again, that would absolutely be part of my journey. Anvin's one of our awesome tutors, and I'm very curious to hear his take about, tell us about how do you prioritize studying, right? I want to hear. I think this is like a really important topic. A lot of people like stress about COMATs, shelf exams, step 2 looming down the road. What was your strategy for not only doing well on the shelf exams, but also accumulating and reviewing knowledge and setting yourself up well to do well in step 2, which we all know is like a must do for anyone on this call. You're remotely interested in competitive specialties. It's a mandatory exam.
Yep. Thank you for asking me. So I feel like the couple like go-to advice I always find is like trying to find your resources, stick to a couple, and really try to focus on wherever you can find time and make time for those resources throughout. Because I feel like during your tough rotations, your long IM days, your long surgical days, the last thing you want to do is like, oh, I have to come back and do like 50 questions view rolled. Oh no. So it's like something where it's like I feel like being able to make time wherever, whether it be Anki, whether it be doing questions, set time in the morning, set time during breaks, set time like during the evening. So you have more repetition throughout, like that's longitudinal, but also something where it's like it's way easier to be like, hey, let me bang out 10 questions right now in the morning where on my commute, or like listen to a podcast on my commute, versus like having to save it all for the very end or the very early part of your day when it's like, hey, that's the last thing you kind of want to do, and also just not sustainable after a certain period of time as well. I think also where it's like just trying to find learning opportunities in the hospital, whether it be 3 rotations, like trying to see the bread and butter things in IM, where that will help you develop your, test taking rationale when you see that question in real life, because you can reflect on the experiences that you had, be like, oh, I saw this case, I saw heart failure, so I know how to do heart failure management. I see pneumonia, so I can know how to do pneumonia management. So I think it's a balance of wanting to seek out those learning experiences, but also, making time throughout the day. Small chunks is always my go-to versus something bigger at the end. And then also test taking strategies. I feel like that's always the big thing where it's like knowledge is one thing, but being able to feel confident when approaching a question and having a routine when going about a question, that can be life changing as well, in terms of like, hey, it makes your life a lot easier if you can develop those skills. So
Love it. Pearls, real pearls. All right. So VSLO is another big part of third year, right? You got to start thinking about when and applying to away rotations and what it is. So for anyone that doesn't know, VSLO is an application system that everybody uses to apply to away rotations, right? I think it would be cool. Like everybody on the panel, I want to hear everybody just give a number. All right. How many away rotations did you do? So number, and then did you match at one of your away sites? Okay. So I'll start. I did 3 away rotations and I did match at one of them. Olivia?
I did 4 and I matched at one of them.
Okay. Anvin?
I did 4 and also matched in one of them.
All right. Brandon?
5 ways and matched one of them.
What about you, Simon?
3, and I matched outside of one of those 3 because that's where I wanted to match, but I did do 3.
Nice. All right. Joe?
I did 8 aways and I did match at one of them.
And Risa?
I did 5 aways. I did not match at one of them. I think I actually got rejected for an away where I matched. So you
right.
never know what can happen.
I love that. You know what? We needed that. I feel like otherwise it would have just been too easy to be like, all right, guys, that's it. That's the advice. You need to do your ways, and then we move on. But I think that is still probably my running advice, but I appreciate you, Risa, for helping us have other perspectives. And I think away rotations are like by far, because of everything that we've said so far, it's the number one most impactful thing for securing a match in a program, especially punching up to a competitive field or competitive environment or program or city as a deal. That's it. All right, we do a whole webinar like later in the year on VSLO and all the strategies and all the different things. We'll invite you all guys to it, and it'll be great. But out of interest of time, we'll leave you with that one message. I think a couple of recap points that I think are really important. I think no matter what specialty you're pursuing, I think it's important to show up every day to every rotation and actually give it your all as far as like your learning, your effort into the exams, your effort into the content. And then there's always something. I'm a very big believer that there's always something that you can learn and glean from every single person, no matter what field you're in. There's always a skill, a tactic, an inspirational moment that you can gather, even if you're on a certain specialty and you have no interest in it. Like that was me on OBGYN. I think OBGYNs are like amazing. I just like, I'm not into it, not my thing. But like, I learned so much from how they run their service and the residents there, even though I had no interest in like the topic matter per se, right? I think you need to like look for nuggets to take with you to adapt into your toolbox because it's going to come in handy one day. The other thing is, one site does not fit all. So your experience in one specialty at one location is not indicative of how that specialty is practiced all across the board. The reason why I include this is because I had a mentee 2 years back in the kind of earlier days of MatchPal, and I was working with him, and he's like, "Hey man, I'm going to do general surgery. I love it." I'm like, "All right, are you ready for general surgery? Like, about like Q3 call, like, you're going to be working like a lot. Like, I know operating is great. I love operating too, but like, are you ready for that? Is that something, is that a commit? Like, are we going all in? Have you like evaluated the impact on your quality of life, length of training, all these other things?" And he's like, "What do you mean? What do you mean? What are you talking about? I get out at 4 every day. I show up at 9." And I'm like, "Where are you doing general surgery?" Like, it's like not like his whole view of general surgery was like on this community rotation that didn't have a residency or a trauma center or call. And it was like a super chill MS3 rotation, like probably the best general surgery rotation you can have if you're not interested in surgery. But he was about to apply to a field that he knew nothing about, right? And that's like eye-opening to me because I mean, most people probably get a semblance of a reality when they're on an MS3 clerkship, but just keep that in mind that the culture, the workflow, efficiency, case type, like you might be really into one specific procedure that one site does or one patient population that a site serves. And you're not going to get that everywhere you go, right? And so keep that in mind. Like you have to think about bread and butter. Like what is like the most boring day in the field objectively across the board, across all practice types? What is the most boring day in this field? And am I going to be excited to do that for 30 years? That's how you know what specialty you should be doing. We talked about away rotations. And again, we'll have a webinar on that actually like in a month or two. We're talking about all the strategies, but plan, get your stuff together, apply to 10, I always say, try to get at least 3 on your schedule. And there, as you already saw, like almost all of us matched to the place that we did aways at. So it's undoubtedly a massive component of your application. And then we talked about obviously the importance of exams. I think one thing I'll definitely ask about is maybe Risa or anyone else on the panel, if you want to talk quickly, or I think Joe, you mentioned you had some good thoughts about this earlier when we chatted as well. Talk to me about the considerations for research here, because I think when you're pursuing a competitive field, there's always an inclination like, should I take the research here? Maybe I don't have enough. Like, do I need this? So I don't know if, Risa or Joe, whichever one of you guys want to start.
Yeah, so just for context, I took a research year in between my third and fourth year of medical school. So I spent a year doing basic science research, some clinical research, and then also got a master's at the same time. I was also teaching medical students too. So it was a little bit, I guess, like more comprehensive than just a research year. Um, I did it there was many reasons. My program had tuition benefits, the master's program. I was also very interested in academic medicine. And so there was that whole component. I think like just for the shortened version for general surgery specifically, I don't think you have to do a research year, but I will say if you're applying to academic programs that require 1 to 2 research years, or if you are like only want to match to academic programs and you don't have enough research, you don't have any research, then you may need to do that because, I even know from our program, if we won't really interview applicants that don't have any research, because how do we know you're going to be a good fit for the program that's going to require you to do a research year if you haven't done any? And it doesn't have to be 10 projects. It's actually better if it's one project that you've published, you spent a couple years on, and you can talk about it endlessly. That's kind of like my 2 cents on it.
Joe, you wanna add some color to that?
I'd love to. So I think I have an interesting perspective on this now. I'm at a pretty academic transitional year now for my first year of residency, and I'm one of very few DOs. So it's me and many, many MDs, and everyone's applying, everyone's going on to very competitive specialties. So we have 5, I'm one of 5 skin turns is what I call us, but we're all going into derm, and it's me, a DO, and 4 other MDs, and all of the MDs took traditional research years. And they took, for the most part, between 3rd and 4th year. Something I've realized that is a big difference in mindset between MDs and DOs is, for the most part, and at least from the people I know, many DOs are applying, and if they don't match, then they'll go ahead and take a research year after graduation. as opposed to many MDs who it's really sort of built into their curriculum to take a research year between third and fourth year. And I didn't realize what a difference that ultimately makes in your application until recently, seeing my own friends in their research years now, post grad. If you take a post grad research year with the intention of reapplying, maybe you found out in March you didn't match as a fourth year. That leaves you maybe a month or two to find a research year. By the time you start your research year, it might be May, June. Applications are due in September. So now you have June, July, August. You have 3, maybe 4 months if you're doing a research year post grad to really beef up your application. And in terms of research, that's no time at all. It's so challenging. It's so time intensive to produce high quality research. Yeah, you could probably pump out some bullshit case reports. We all do. At the end of the day, it is a numbers game. You have to have enough research for your field. But that's not a key to success. Whereas what many of the MDs do, what RISA did, is taking that gap year between M3 and M4 gives you a full year to beef up your application, puts you really ahead of the cohort of people you're going to be applying with. And just to quote some of the program directors I've gotten to know along this journey, it's sort of the last remaining cheat code to help you match into something competitive. So it's just something really to think about. I personally was blessed with a chance to do a virtual research year. So I was able to do one in parallel with my third year, produce a high volume of high quality research, but it was very challenging to balance everything. So it's all about how much time you have to commit to something and how familiar you are with actually producing research.
I couldn't agree more. I think the ERAS application system is also kind of starting to, as we pivot towards like quality over quantity, there's actually a pretty big update that's happening for the current like MS3s when you guys apply. That's completely different. That's never been like really part of the application before. They're actually capping they're capping like the number of entries. So like before, if you did a publication and a poster and a presentation, it was all like triple listed. Now you're consolidating your research output by project. So now it's like, this is the name of the project. We don't really care. I mean, sure, yeah, a publication is way better than a poster at a conference, but the number of items, how long that page is way less important. It's about what was the ultimate top quality output and your contribution in it. Are you first author? Are you somewhere in the middle? Can you talk about it intelligently? Are you passionate about it? Does it fit with the field? Right. So think about that as you're pursuing research as well. It is partially a numbers game if you can pull it off. But I also think the depth of your involvement, like a first author publication in a really like a solid journal for your specialty, is probably like if any of you guys can pull that off, that is one of the most beautiful like that will check off almost any program's research box, right? Not necessarily having 20 posters, whatever. So just something to keep in mind, just an update that we wanted to share. So I think we kind of talked a lot about a lot of this, but when you're finished MS3, you've done all this stuff. The next part is really getting into the application process, right? So, we talked pretty extensively about, the things that are valued by program directors. We talked about research. We talked about things that we didn't talk about. We talked about ways. We didn't talk about the personal statement. So I think personal statement varies. Like some fields, it's kind of like a back burner thing just to make sure you didn't write something horrible. Some fields and programs really care a lot. I think the number one thing is, having a grammatically correct chronological order and something that actually allows me as the reader to get to know you beyond all these accolades and scores and things that you've done, like really like getting down to your why. And I think the rule of thumb that I didn't say this, a program director from when I was a sub intern told me this, like the truth is 80% of personal statements don't do anything for anyone. They're super forgettable. They don't move the needle at all. 10% will ruin an otherwise really good application because they either made a grammatical error, they make no sense, they wrote a really, really bad statement. And then the other 10% really make me interested in someone that I otherwise would have never looked at, right? And those are the people that, that's who you want to be. You want to be that, even if you have a 260 on step 2, you want to be the person that has like a super compelling story because that makes people interested. It makes people want to learn more. They remember you, they rank you higher, and you have a better outcome. So, I don't want to get too deep in the weeds. I want to leave time for breakout rooms and questions and things like that. And we also do a personal statement thing every spring for everyone. So stay tuned for that. But just something to think about. And like the number one thing to make a really good statement is writing it over and over and over again and getting as many eyes and pens to that paper as humanly possible, right? You want to get people who are in medicine. You want to get people who are ideally some perspectives from outside of medicine can be valuable too. And I think that revision is the number one thing that produces a high quality statement. And, you know, we could talk all about that offline. You guys could ask that maybe in the breakout rooms or whatever if you're interested, but definitely something to think about and start writing it early because the best statements that I've seen have been edited at least, 4 or 5 times completely, like front to end. So keep that in mind. Last thing I'll say for this slide is MS4 scheduling. So when you're building your MS4 schedule, try to get sub-Is for the earlier part of MS4. The golden months that everybody here should be going for is July, August, September. Those are the months that you want to be on sub-Is. If you have some later, it's not the end of the world, but there's 2 reasons why it's not ideal. One is that you submit your applications in September. So you can't get letters of recommendation from a sub-I that you do in October, November, December. It's kind of like useless to get letters of rec, which are very valuable. And you need letters of rec for your specific specialty. And sub-I letters are way stronger than MS3 letters. The second thing is this, they kind of already are starting to review applications. So if you're rotating in December, I mean, sure, you can do a good job and still get an interview, but they've already looked at like 300 applicants and they've already invited a bunch of them to come interview. And so you're kind of a little bit late to the game. Can you still match? Yes, but it's much harder, right? You're nowhere nearly as in an advantageous position once you're in December or a January sub-I. And the last thing I'll say about those later sub-Is is that those rotations can make you look bad because guess what you're going to be doing in November, December, and January? It's going on interviews. And if you need to take 7 days off to go on 7 interviews during one sub-I, you're not going to look great. To PDs, to residents, they're like, where's this person? Why are they not here? Why are they taking so many days off? And sure, like, should we as a culture understand that that's part of the process? Yes. But your job is to try to avoid any reason why anybody looks at you not favorably. And this is really important, right? So try to line the sub-Is up for, take step 2 early, get that exam out of the way by May or June, and have all those prime summer, early fall months wide open. And ideally, I think I did this. I know Simon did this as well. Have your like middle months, like the early winter, just like on, rotations that don't matter, random electives, online rotations, any rotation where your absence does not impact you negatively whatsoever. So you could take your interviews. You don't have to stress about it. You don't have to stress that you're missing something important. That's so important. I think a lot of people like potentially can mess that up. So keep that in mind as well. All right. I think everyone here serves as an advisor. So I think all the stuff that we gave you now is like, we wanted to give you the advice that like we wish we had, the things that we see from our own experience. I think working with like a lot of clients every single year that go through this process that make really good, they do really well, and then they also make a lot of mistakes. So we're kind of a part of both of those things. I think gives us a very unique perspective. So I know Brandon's, PGY6 has been advising literally the whole way through. What are the most common things that people who are pursuing ortho? What is the number one worry on their mind when you chat with them for the first time?
Yeah, I think a couple things come up. I think research is a big one, and if they have enough, or how do they obtain research opportunities? Because I think at a lot of osteopathic schools, those opportunities are limited, and you really have to seek them out. Same thing with regards to choosing letters of rec. Like, how do you develop those relationships to get them? And then a lot of it is is my board score hitting the minimum of what I need. Like, am I going to be screened out? Am I going to be considered? I think those are probably the main things that come up right away. And then from I think the MS1 to MS3 cohort of students, and then for the rising MS4s, or I guess late MS3s, it's a lot of strategic planning in terms of how to schedule your rotations, and kind of diving into the specifics of which rotations are maybe more beneficial at the beginning to get you really tuned up for the rest of your audition season.
Yeah, the strategy, the which rotations you do first, even though it's not necessarily always in your control, but like lining them up strategically is also really important. And choosing your sites is also really important. We can get into that, in the Q&A. So next thing I wanted to ask, maybe Joe, if you would want to talk about like what's the part of the process as an advisor that you feel like you can make the greatest impact on, if there is one?
Yeah, I feel like, especially for DOs, I feel like most of our schools don't have any sort of in-house derm department. I know at my school we didn't. We barely, even our faculty who taught us like integ, like let's have some fun here. Let me ask the panel a question. How many weeks of dermatology or integumentary systems did you have in medical school? So like 2 weeks, 4 weeks, zero. Like it's crazy. They don't
Like
teach
we had like
it.
one lecture maybe.
Yeah, it's insane. And then you go and you meet with these advisors who have a master's of nothing, and they just shit on your dreams. They're like, they don't know what they're talking about. And then medical students come to us and they're like, everyone has been pissing in my Cheerios and telling me not to do this. I don't know what the timelines are. Nobody's giving me guidance. The people who I'm asking for advice, my attendings that I'm working with, are 76 years old. They don't know what a computer is. What do I do? Where do I start? And I've had M1s, M2s, M3s come to me with the same questions. So I think just figuring it out, don't trust Reddit. Oh my God. I've had so many medical students come to me and go, I saw on Reddit, don't psych yourself out. People are crazy on the internet. But really coming up with good resources, finding people who are actively currently in residency, someone like any of us who are really close to where you were, but who are a little bit more informed because we've gone through the process really recently. Understanding what you should be hitting sort of as benchmarks every single year, who you should be trying to network with, attend which conferences are actually worth attending, how much research, and like how to effectively juggle your time without becoming spread too thin or completely overwhelmed. Just like kind of general guidance, I think is a lot of what people come to me really thirsty for.
All right. Maybe Anvin, you want to talk about academic versus community? Like what's the pursuit there, regardless of specialty, what are the differences that you need to be considering?
Of course. So as someone who's in like a pretty like rigorous like academic program, I think it's something where it's like I love it. It's something that I sought out, but something where it's like you do want to go in like kind of knowing and acknowledging the differences. Whereas like in academic, I feel like there is like a hierarchy that's pretty clearly in place in terms of like attending to fellow to resident to students. So something was like you do have to kind of buy into that process a little bit and kind of recognize, at least for me now, where it's like, hey, I may not be the first person to do a procedure, I may not be doing this, but or I have to kind of like organize myself accordingly. So just being prepared for that, but then also, whereas like academic wise, the expectation was like, hey, you want to be involved one way or another, whether it be teaching, whether it be research, kind of be like, hey, step up to the plate and being able to want to do that and kind of going out of the way to kind of find those opportunities. Because in academic programs, you do have a lot more of those traditional resources out there, or it's been established in some way. I feel like for the community side, you may be like, I feel like the culture is different, the attendings are different, but then also, again, like if you want to do procedures, I think sometimes community programs might be better for that, for example. Whereas like, hey, you can be able to like be the first person to do those things. Or also like the environment might be a little bit better for that. Or if you like more rural programs, for example, it is your personal preference, but I think doing your research and finding the people that have exposures to both, and also, kind of seeing if you can do your rotations accordingly. I feel like part of it is, understanding the differences, but then also, finding the people that have gone through it.
I love that. And maybe Risa, if you were to round us out, any myths that are true or not true by being both an advisor, kind of more like, you know, almost a senior resident at this point, basically, anything that is true or not true about the selection process itself that you've seen.
Okay, like two things that come to mind. One is that I think particularly for surgery, they always were like the personal statement matters, but not really. Like surgeons don't really have enough time to like actually read it. But I will say, like on my interview, I interviewed at like I want to say like 25 places, and multiple times my personal statement got brought up. So people really do read it, and sometimes when they have two applicants that are essentially the same, the personal connection they get from your personal statement might just be the thing that gets you that interview. And then I think the second thing is I know we talked a lot about like sub-Is and like trying really hard on your during M3, especially in the field that you want to go into. But I think what was touched upon a lot in my interviews was so they get your MSP so they can see comments from all the different specialties you've rotated on. And people would bring up my comments on pediatrics about how I was really involved. And I personally hated pediatrics, but they couldn't tell. And they said that means a lot because that shows like no matter what specialty what you're doing, you're putting all of your effort, your hard work into it, not just in the field that you want to go into. And that kind of just shows who you are as a person. And so they will look at those other specialty reviews and see how you did on that. So I think just keep that in mind. Just because you want to go into surgery or you want to go into IR and you're on your IM rotation, it still matters. Literally everything matters. Treat everything like an interview, basically. It's a job, as we said. You're applying for a job, so.
100%. All right, let's get into breakout rooms in just a second, but I think a couple of summary slides, right? You want to be able to plan your journey early, have the right people around you, make a plan, right? The key thing about planning the journey is having a plan, understanding what that plan even entails, and make sure that the people that you're getting advice from are people that actually understand how the process is currently, what matters currently. And lastly, I think Risa, you had a great segue here. Building a narrative, right? You are a hardworking person at everything you do. These are the things that you've excelled at through the experiences that you've pursued as a medical student. And here's how it all was kind of like captured all together, right? At the end, when you write your personal statement and you submit your application, there should be a clear through line of how all these interests intersect and connect and build upon each other. And ultimately, what you're trying to show is this is how I'm going to be a valuable member of your team, right? So I think that's kind of the really, really one of the bigger takeaways that I think, especially if you're on the junior side, you still have time to frame yourself in this way. This is like really, really important stuff. And I think these are the things you want to avoid, right? You want to avoid not taking USMLE, because I know that's a lot of schools who are kind of pushing that. I think it's wrong, okay? Especially if you're in this call, you're looking for a competitive field, you want to take USMLE, you want to not try to do it yourself. You want to not be limited by the things that are in your school, and you want to certainly not end up in a position where you did all this work and paid all this money to go to school and then ended up in a field that you didn't even want to be in the first place. So those are the kind of the takeaways. And obviously, like, we're all here because we want to help through MatchPal, and everyone here is part of our team. Like, we do tons of free resources, tutoring, advising, and I think the panel has done a pretty good job at showing it. You don't have to believe us. Our students believe it. We worked with over 1,000 students over 4 years, which is pretty crazy because we never honestly thought we'd be this at this point, but here we are. And we're the only platform that really exists for DOs. Like, we prioritize and almost exclusively work with DO students across all specialties. And we're here to help you guys if you want any sort of help, whether it's with exams, whether it's with pursuing a competitive specialty, setting up a plan, we're getting your personal statements edited, preparing for interviews. Like, this is all stuff that we do every single day with students, like, all the time. And we love it. And as you can tell, pretty knowledgeable about it as well. So I want to get into breakout rooms. So if you guys want to scan the QR code, if you guys want to chat with us, I'll actually leave that here. And we'll put it in the chat as well, but out of the interest of time, QR code is for free consult if you guys want to chat with us to learn more about the platform. But otherwise, we're going to do breakout rooms right now, and just join the specialty that you want to chat with, ask questions, drop your questions in the chat box, and we'll answer them and hopefully get some more value in the more specialty specific way, because everything that we do in MatchPal is actually like a specialty specifics, because every field is really different. So let's, I think, Ian, do you have the breakout rooms ready or not yet?
Breakout rooms are ready. We'll have our co-hosts go and join their respective rooms, and then students go ahead, join whatever room you like. And if you need any help or need to be assigned, just send me a message, okay?
Awesome. All right, guys, we'll see you in a couple minutes. All right, guys. So like I said, if you guys want to chat with anyone from our team, you can scan this. We have a discount code here, which we'll send you guys in an email as well. But really appreciate you taking the time. We thank the panelists a ton for the time, the insight, the strategies. And we hope you guys, as the people on the call, got a lot out of it. So thanks again for joining us. And we hope to see you at the next one. And if you want to work with the team, just just fill out the form. It takes 2 seconds, and we could see if it's a good fit for you guys. All right, guys. See you on the flip side. Thanks to the panelists.